thought that's really interesting, as worrying, as infuriating, as serious as it is. It's also really interesting because it seems to be following a particular evolution that we have seen in retail. Hey, it's Marek. Everyone's talking about Oracle layoffs that happened a couple of weeks ago. 30,000 people let go, about 20% of the workforce, about 12,000 people let go in India. Massive layoff operations. Some people claim that Oracle's doing it to fund the building of new data centers, to fuel the growth of their AI operations. Look, the introduction of artificial intelligence in a lot of areas in software as a service companies is really impacting the shape, the distribution of jobs within organizations. Even so, this looks like a massive event. 20% of the workforce. One of the former now employees at Oracle wrote on LinkedIn that, according to her, the layoffs appeared to follow an algorithm of high-level individual contributors and mid-level managers, especially those with outstanding stock options, presumably unvested stock options. So when you read that, when you think about it, it sounds like Oracle tried to make sure that the layoffs were not too expensive for them. Now, how do you quickly decide who to fire when you're trying to fire 30,000 employees? Well, clearly, if you're a software company, you might decide to use an algorithm for that. We don't know this for sure, but honestly, I'd be extremely surprised if Oracle didn't have a particular algorithm that would calculate that. Regardless of whether they had that or not, an algorithm like that would simply look at every employee, try to calculate the value that they contribute to the organization, and then also try to calculate the cost of letting them go. And then, if it makes sense, well, they would make the layoffs list. So effectively, you put a price on every employee. Now, when I read about it, I thought that's really interesting, as worrying, as infuriating, as serious as it is. It's also really interesting because it seems to be following a particular evolution that we have seen in retail. So a long time ago, and for hundreds, for thousands, for tens of thousands of years, in retail, everything that was sold was basically negotiated. You would have a seller, you would have a buyer, and then they would try to get to an agreement on the price that a particular product, perhaps a service, the buyer would pay for. Now, relatively recently, about 160 years ago, a gentleman called John Wanamaker introduced a concept of price tags in his retail stores in Philadelphia in the US. And so this was quite genius because that allowed retail to scale up. You would just offer a product, decide at what price you offer that product. You would put a price tag on every item of this product and you would sell it. It's a proxy for trust. It says we don't really need to have that conversation. There's a particular quality that we're offering. Also, we're not trying to squeeze you as a customer. So a pretty genius concept. 160 years ago or so. We don't know exactly when that happened, or at least I wasn't able to find the exact year, but it was in 1860s. And so we have that concept of a price tag. A couple of decades ago, a new concept emerged, a concept of dynamic pricing. You detach the price tag from a product and put it next to it on a shelf, or, if you're offering this online, it's an online price. This detachment allows you to change the price depending on all sorts of context conditions. In one store, the price could be different than in another store. If demand grows, you could quickly change that price. We have seen that in air travel. Air travel has been particularly recognized for the introduction of dynamic pricing. You could have 100, 200 people on the same flight, and each of them could be paying a very different price. So dynamic pricing is that concept that came after the concept of a price tag. In the last months or maybe a couple of years, we've started seeing another shift of that price tag. So initially the price tag was on a product, then it has been detached from the product and it was put on a shelf or somewhere else. Now that price tag is being attached to us, to you, to an individual customer. with the ability of algorithms to quickly understand the context of every purchase, it's the purchase in the context of the purchaser and everything that's happening around that transaction that gives rise to a single price. I call it stealth pricing. I use a single word for it, stealth pricing. You are being stealth priced. And now the genius part, I know you're thinking that's really bad, right? It's not a nice word, being stealth priced, but still, bear with me. The genius of the concept is that you're not only detaching that price from a shelf or a place you advertise, and you sort of move it onto an individual. It's also the fact that it's not just retail anymore. Now the scary part, right? So let's start with the scary part. You are being stealth priced when you're being hired. There's an audit of about 500 AI labor management platforms. And in this audit, we have seen that many of those systems are using worker data, and they're feeding that worker data into automated pay decisions. And so they will analyze whatever they know about a particular employee, and they will decide how much to offer that employee. If you have a history of payday loans, so those short-term loans with high interest rates, which suggests that you might not be really good at managing money, the employer's AI workforce management system might suggest that you will be happy to accept a slightly lower salary offer simply because you might just need the money. And so you'll take the job anyways. So you're being stealth priced when you're being hired. You're being stealth priced when you're being fired. I've given you that example of Oracle. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of this in future. You're being stealth priced when you're buying products. Delta Airlines. We know that airlines already use dynamic pricing. Delta Airlines is tailoring fares in real time based on your estimated willingness to pay. Now, they're clearly saying that they're not using personal information for that. So they're not sharing any personal information with a particular software as a service provider that suggests what those customized prices should be. But having said that, what is personal information? It could be anything. It could be a context, the search query that you enter, the region that you're connecting from, and so on and so on. So with this in mind, you're going to see a lot of retailers applying that stealth pricing. And then you could be stealth priced when selling. There's a platform called Carvana, Carvana, in the US, which allows you to sell your used car. When you enter the car's information, they will quickly calculate the price that they will offer you. They will take into consideration where you live or what region you're selling this car in, and so on and so on. So again, not exactly personal information as in your name or your street address, but the more they know about you, the more precise that offering will be. And your neighbor might be selling exactly the same car, but because of whatever the difference is between you and them, they might be offered a very different price for the very same car. So when I wrote about stealth pricing in my weekly newsletter, I introduced a definition of stealth pricing, which is stealth pricing is the practice of using algorithms to calculate individualized prices for goods, services, labor, or people, happening in real time, at scale, and without the priced party's knowledge or ability to negotiate. Unlike traditional dynamic pricing, which adjusts prices based on broad market conditions, for instance, surge pricing does that when you're using an Uber application. Stealth pricing uses granular data to calculate a price for a specific individual based on what the system infers about them, their behavior, their history, their alternatives, or their likely tolerance for a particular price. It applies not only to products, what you pay, but also to labor, what you're being offered, employment, whether you kept, and assets, what you're offered when you sell. So that's the definition that I had in my newsletter. Now, it clearly shows that stealth pricing is benefiting from this massive imbalance. We are being stealth priced by organizations that have the capability to do that. But could we stealth price others too? So as individuals, when we go shopping, could we understand what is the lowest price that I could pay for a particular product? Could we do it at scale using algorithms? When I'm being hired, could I have a tool that allows me to understand what is the maximum ask my future or maybe current employer will accept? So I could be asking for a pay rise, for instance. Or maybe when I'm selling something, what is the lowest price? Oh, wait, no, what is the highest price I could offer that will get somebody to buy it, right? So effectively a sort of market analytics tool using algorithms, doing it at scale, and trying to apply this massive, quick, super fast calculation of prices, put them on your employers, put them on sellers, put them on potential buyers. So is it possible? Well, obviously, an average individual is not able to quickly build software tools, even though I might be so excited about vibe coding in some other episodes. I don't think it's realistic right now to assume that everyone would be building their own tools for stealth pricing others, or stealth pricing back. Having said that, we've seen organizations like Perplexity build tools like this. Perplexity has a tool or a browser called Comet, and Comet, up until recently, was able to go onto Amazon and compare prices of products, browse through the retailer's website to find the best offers. Amazon pushed back, got a court to stop Perplexity from offering that function, which is basically like saying a retailer does not allow you to walk into their store with a shopping agent, a person that advises you on making the best decisions. Their argumentation was also that those software entities do not really look at advertisements, and so that's clearly disrupting the business model of Amazon. But I think we should think twice about actually allowing customers, and maybe that judge specifically looking into that case should have considered that this is a very, very powerful tool, bringing in more balance in this imbalanced world of stealth pricing. There's a tool called Pactum AI that a lot of large retailers use to negotiate procurement contracts at scale. Some of those retailers, I believe Walmart was one of them. Let me just have a look into my notes. It was not just Walmart, but also Maersk. So Walmart and Maersk, M-A-E-R-S-K. Those two organizations have turned that tool inward. So not just negotiating with suppliers, but now their employees can negotiate within the organization. They can negotiate the best salaries for themselves. And it's looking for the so-called Pareto optimum. So a value beyond which one of the parties will start losing. So really trying to find the most optimal value for, in this case, remuneration. So employees can use those technologies that are being used for stealth pricing now to negotiate their own salaries. We are being stealth priced. The market is clearly imbalanced right now. So the question is, do we want to ban this approach to stealth pricing, or perhaps do we want to equip everyone or those impacted by stealth pricing with tools to fight back and ultimately potentially get better value? Now, everything that I described here works in a competitive market, but there's a very, very interesting twist in that story the moment various organizations start to use the same algorithms for stealth pricing. And that's something that we need to be on the lookout for. What we might be seeing fairly soon is that those algorithms will start coordinating, not through communicating with one another, but the moment those algorithms run on top of the same models behind the scenes, they seem to be starting to coordinate. They seem to be kind of, getting into the same wavelengths when they work and doing something that market regulators would call collusion. You can read some hints about what's happening in this space in my newsletters, some of the ones that I recently published, The Economy of Algorithms. But I feel like I'll need to focus on it a bit more in one of the upcoming newsletters, which will, of course, then turn into a podcast recording like this one. So you are being stealth-priced. Let's talk about what it means for us. How can we fight back? How can we get some value out of this new situation? In the meantime, stay curious.